I was standing right at the edge of my own property watching no fuming as another group of total strangers wandered through my woods like they were on some guided tour. You ever get that feeling like you're invisible on your own land? That's where I was clutching these court documents that had just landed in my hands, delivered by a very nervous postal worker, and my name was all over a judgment for $20 million. $20 million. The judge had sided with me, biggest payout anyone had ever seen in an HOA case, at least in this county. But let me tell you, I didn't start out looking for a fight or a payday. All I wanted was some peace, a piece of woods I'd saved for all my life. And somehow it turned into the biggest showdown my neighborhood had ever seen. 3 years before all this chaos, I'd finally pulled the trigger on my dream 15 acres of beautiful wild woods at the border of Willow Creek. My name's Mark Thompson, and if you asked anyone back then, I was just another guy who finally managed to escape the city grind, hoping for some quiet, where the loudest thing at night was a chorus of crickets. The realtor swore up and down it was private, no weird shared access, nothing to worry about. I even spent extra for a title search, double-checked every legal line because I wasn't about to get mixed up in some boundary dispute. But you know, paperwork only goes so far, especially when people just ignore it. The day I moved in, I started noticing folks wandering through the trees at first, just a couple here and there. Looked like hikers who'd gotten turned around, so I'd go out, point to the markers, and send them back. I tried to keep it friendly. But then it was families hauling picnic baskets and blankets acting like my creek was their personal retreat. Teenagers started showing up at night building bonfires, leaving their trash and beer cans everywhere. The kicker dog walkers. Folks actually hung their little baggies of dog poop on my trees like I was running a lost and found for canine waste. I tried to set boundaries, fence off the main paths, put up no trespassing signs every 50 feet, but it was like playing whack-a-mole. The next morning, half my signs were ripped out and tossed in the brush. One night, my security camera picked up Richard Hayes, he's on the HOA board, by the way, ripping out my signs while telling his wife, loud enough for the camera to pick up, he has no right to block our trails. Trails. These were just muddy paths, cutting straight through my land. You can't make this stuff up. So I did what any rational person would do. I went to the HOA president, Karen Mitchell, thinking maybe we could talk it out like adults. She gave me this smile, you know the type, and told me, oh, the woods have always been part of the neighborhood. People are used to it. I showed her the deed, the maps, the whole 9 yards. She actually waved them away, said their documents were different, and maybe I was being selfish for not sharing such a beautiful spot with my neighbors. Selfish. Right. The more fences I put up, the more creative they got. The next week I stumble on a tree house, not the cute little one you build for your kid, but this multi-level monstrosity with rope bridges and a zip line. I'm serious. Contractors were there hammering away, and when I asked who'd given permission, they actually said the HOA had greenlit a community playground. I had to send certified letters to every single house in Willow Creek, clear as day, this is my land, stay off, or it's trespassing. Karen doubled down. She sent me a letter official, HOA letterhead, looking all legal, accusing me of being a bad neighbor and threatening me with fines for creating disharmony. Can you imagine getting fined for protecting your own property? But the moment I truly snapped was 6 months in. My German Shepherd Max, my best buddy, came hobbling home yelping. I rushed him to the vet, and it turned out his paw was burned and full of glass. When I checked my cameras, I saw a group of teens had lit a bonfire the night before, left shattered bottles and hot coals everywhere, and Max, doing his rounds, stepped right in it. I was done playing nice. That's when I called Sandra Williams, maybe the toughest property attorney in the state, and boy, she loves a good HOA fight. She told me this wasn't just trespassing, it was a full-blown conspiracy. So we filed suit not just against the HOA, but the board members personally, and 37 homeowners caught on camera stomping through my woods. Discovery was wild. Sandra uncovered a gold mine of emails board members knew all along the woods weren't theirs. They'd even altered maps to make it look like HOA land. Karen herself wrote, "Possession is 9/10 of the law. If enough people use the land, we can claim adverse possession eventually." That was in black and white. There was even a smoking gun email from before I ever bought the place where they admitted the woods were not HOA property, but decided to treat it as common space anyway because the last owner was old and never around. Expert witnesses came in. Environmental folks said the trails caused erosion and flooding. Some of my best oaks were dying because of that damn treehouse. A forensic accountant put a number on how much value they'd stolen from me, And even a psychologist testified about how much this had wrecked my peace of mind. My attorney laid it out in court: organized theft, fraud, negligence. The board's faces got whiter by the day. But here's the real twist. Turns out the HOA had been running a secret fund money skimmed from everyone's dues to pay for those so-called amenities on my property. Benches, the treehouse, a picnic pavilion they thankfully never built. They even advertised the woods as a selling point for new homes. Karen herself used to take buyers on walks through my trees, talking up the community forest. I still can't believe the nerve. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Former board members, folks I'd never even met, came out of the woodwork to testify about Karen threatening anyone who questioned her. One brought meeting notes where Karen literally said, "Keep using it until someone makes us stop." The jury took just 6 hours. They came back guilty of trespass, conspiracy, fraud, negligence, $5 million in damages right off the bat. But the judge wasn't done. He called this the worst abuse of property rights he'd seen in 30 years. Said the HOA's actions were deliberate, systematic theft. Then the real hammer dropped: punitive damages. $15 million more for a grand total of $20 million. The courtroom went silent. Karen looked like she'd been hit by a truck. Her face went red, then white, then back again. Richard Hayes put his head down and didn't pick it up. Some board members just stared at their shoes, like maybe if they sat still enough, they'd disappear. But it didn't stop there. The judge ordered the board dissolved on the spot. A court administrator would run the HOA while they sorted out bankruptcy. The worst part for them: personal liability. The judgment was more than the HOA's insurance and assets combined, so the board members' own houses, savings, retirement, all on the line. Karen let out this awful wail when she realized her life was about to get picked apart by creditors. The judge set bail for Karen and Richard at $500,000 each, others at $250,000. As the bailiffs closed in, Karen's legs gave out. She had to be helped up, still mumbling about community spaces while her mascara ran down her face. The cherry on top: the district attorney stood up and said they'd be pressing criminal charges for fraud and conspiracy, 5 years in prison for each count. Karen's broker, who was sitting in the gallery, stood up and told everyone her real estate license was terminated, effective immediately. Poof, 20 years of expertise gone in 60 seconds. You know, people always talk about standing up for what's right, but nobody tells you how ugly it gets or how sweet that last moment can be. Walking out of that courtroom, knowing the law was finally on my side, I won't lie, it felt good. But you have to wonder, in neighborhoods all over the country, how many other Karens are out there drawing lines in the dirt and hoping nobody ever calls their bluff. Makes you think, right? Would you fight or let it go? So what would you do if your whole community turned against you just for protecting what's yours? Drop your thoughts below. Who do you think was right? Ever tangled with an HOA and lived to tell about it? Let's hear your wildest stories, because trust me, this isn't the end for HOAs and people like me, not by a long shot.